everyone, and welcome back to the AreYouAnnie podcast, where we speak truth, break silence, and empower survivors of narcissistic abuse. I'm Kyle Hackley, attorney, mother, grandmother, and author of Undercurrent. If you've been following this podcast, you know that Annie Black, the protagonist of Undercurrent, isn't just one woman's story of escaping narcissistic abuse. She's a composite of so many women who have suffered in silence, trapped in relationships where the scars aren't visible, but cut just as deep. And as a reminder, I'm not a healthcare professional. I'm someone passionate about bringing awareness to narcissistic abuse with the hope of validating and inspiring Annies everywhere. If you've ever felt unheard, unseen, or doubted, this episode may be for you, because we're delving into one of the most devastating realities of narcissistic abuse. Why there's often no physical evidence of abuse, and how that makes it even harder to escape from the relationship. Imagine this. If someone hits you, they'll leave a bruise or a broken bone. There's proof of the abuse. Proof means that if you tell someone, likely they're going to believe you. But what if the wounds don't show up on your skin? What if they're just carved into your soul instead? I'm talking about the unseen horror of narcissistic abuse. The words that cut deeper than any knife, the manipulation that steals your sense of reality, and the silence victims are forced into. The harsh reality is that narcissists don't need fists. They don't need to strike their victims to hurt them. They use something even more damaging: words. Words tear at our confidence, at our sense of self. Words tell us we're not good enough, or I can't take a joke, or you don't appreciate me at all and all the sacrifices I make for you. I remember reading somewhere the phrase, "It's death by 1,000 paper cuts, each one so small, so subtle, that by the time you realize you're bleeding, you're already lost yourself." How true is that? This is how it usually starts. A narcissist doesn't start with the cruelty. They start with charm. They make you feel so special, chosen, and seen. Once you're hooked, the mask can slip. The compliments turn into criticism. The love turns to control. The person who once made you feel like the most important person in the world now makes you feel like you are worth nothing at all. But that's not the worst part. The worst of it is that no one sees it but you. To the outside world, the abuser is still charming. He's still kind. He is just such a great guy, right? Or the perfect husband. And when you finally get the courage to speak up about it, or to admit to someone that something's wrong in your marriage, those people may have a tendency not to believe you. They may even look at you funny and secretly wonder if there's something wrong with you, or they see you as unreasonable or the demanding spouse. Of course, that kind of reaction from your friends or family, it's devastating. I would render to guess that if you did confide in someone, they may have answered you something like this: "But he's always so nice to me. He's such a good dad, and are you sure you're not overreacting?" Those kinds of experiences put us in a state of doubt, keeps us quiet, and trapped. One of the saddest realities of emotional abuse is that sometimes survivors say that they wish they had been physically abused. They actually wish for a bruise or a broken bone so they could point to it and say, look, this is what's happening to me, and I am telling the truth. But because the wounds are invisible, people easily dismiss them. Everyone fights in relationships, you might be told. You're not the only one. He's under a lot of stress at work, and you should be more patient and understanding with him. And after all, they're just words, right? But no, it's not just words. It's psychological warfare. It's gaslighting, where your reality is twisted until you don't even trust your own mind. It's isolation, where you're slowly cut off from friends and family, so there's really no one even left to turn to. And you're made to feel invisible in your own home. And sometimes you're made to feel like you're crazy. And so you start to believe maybe the abuser is right. Maybe you are the problem. Maybe if you tried harder, maybe if you were better, quieter, nicer, would be treated better. But here's the thing. It's not your fault, and it was never your fault. So what do you do when no one else can see? When no one can't see your emotional scars? When the world looks at your abuser and sees him as a nice guy? Well, the first step is to know that abuse is abuse. Whether it leaves a bruise or not, it's abuse. And next, trust yourself. If your gut is telling you that there's something wrong, listen to it. You don't need anyone else's permission to believe in your own pain. And find support, whether it's a therapist who is trained in giving advice in narcissistic abuse, a support group, or simply someone who can remind you that you are not crazy, that you are not alone, and that you deserve better than this. In Undercurrent, Annie Black knew something was really wrong in her marriage, and her husband never had to lay a hand on her for her to know that. His words, his control, his manipulation were enough to keep her living in constant fear. And just like so many others, she struggled to speak up, but she couldn't. She never could figure out how to explain her invisible prison. But Annie's story isn't just about the suffering. It's about the survival and the triumph, about finding the courage to walk away, even when no one else could understand why. She trusted her own reality and decided she was going to reclaim her life. For Annie Black, it meant taking her little baby daughter, securing a student loan, starting college, and eventually working her way through veterinary school, rebuilding her life one step at a time. For each Annie, the path is going to be different, and it may take time, a lot of time. It's going to take support from trusted friends or guidance from a healthcare professional. As hard as it is, I think it's possible to find those trusted people. There's no single right answer, but what matters is that every Annie deserves to find safety, healing, and the chance to rebuild on her terms. If this episode resonates with you, or you believe you know someone who might benefit from this conversation, I ask you to hit subscribe It's the only way that we'll be noticed. And it's the only way that we can spread this conversation and to let the Annies of the world know that they are not alone, that we can validate their feelings. And we want them to stand strong. And as always, I ask you to know that you're not alone, that your voice matters. I want you to be tenacious and never give up on what's important to you. Thank you so much for listening.